Welcome to Inside the Creative Mind with Brian Jones. Get ready to dive into the stories, sparks, and secrets that fuel creativity around the world. From musicians to painters, actors to writers, Brian takes you behind the scenes of the art you love. Let's go inside the creative mind.
All right, let's go. So today we have an incredible artist here. Now, as you know, we're going to be having painters and sculptors and writers and directors and actors, but today we have an incredible musician. Now, I'm going to read her Instagram description first, and then I'm going to let her break that down for us. So, Instagram says, AnnaBelle Swift is a newly emerging German-American singer, songwriter, lawyer, who aims to spread heart-minded integrity through her music, joy, and community. Anna, first of all, thanks so much for being on the show. Help us break all that down.
Sure. Well, hello. I'm so excited and happy to be here. I love that you are doing a podcast on Inside the Creative Mind. Oh my goodness gracious, that is so up my alley. So it just tickles me pink to be a guest on the show. Thank you so much. But just as you were saying, when you were reading my bio, I am a German-American singer, songwriter / lawyer. Ooh, it's a mouthful. But I decided to go ahead and include all that information out there because the hope is that different people will connect to different parts of that. And if folks and listeners can read something there or hear something there that makes them think, ooh, this is an interesting artist, I would like to check her out, then I'm very happy with that because the overall aim here as a new independent artist, of course, is to spread my music and reach as many people as possible. But going back to what you were talking about, I am German-American, meaning that I was born in Germany. I will say I actually have lived in America for most of my life. I am the youngest of 3 other siblings. And so my family migrated over here to America when I was quite young. I was probably about 2 or 3 years old. And so I've definitely grown up in America, but I've still been immersed in the German culture through my family. My mom is German through and through. So is my dad. But if you heard my mom, even after all these years of living in America now for, 40 years, my mom still has a very strong, thick German accent, which is very fun to listen to. And I still very much value my German heritage and keep that close to me. So one German tradition that I remember growing up with that was always so fun was that my siblings and I, we would get to open up all of our Christmas presents on Christmas Eve instead of having to wait until the next morning on Christmas Day. So that's just a German tradition that was very fun for us, and we were lucky to be able to celebrate that. And now, though, that I've lived in America as long as I have, with my 2 kids, I have 2 kids, so we open up most of our presents on Christmas morning, but I do allow them to open up at least one present the night before on Christmas Eve. And I know that they're grateful for that. Yeah, just a fond memory of my German heritage that I've gotten to experience throughout the years. And then you also hit upon the fact that I'm a lawyer, which is very much true as well. What's interesting about that too, though, is that I've somewhat been stepping away from the legal field in terms of moving into management, but I still manage a legal support staff. So I'm still a full-fledged lawyer. I'm licensed here in the state that I'm licensed in, and I oversee other lawyers and legal support staff. That journey is about me expanding into other fields and seeing what life still has to offer beyond just being a lawyer. So I will share that even though I'm a lawyer by trade, I really am an artist at heart. And so artistry, this is something that has come to me later in life. I never knew growing up that I would turn into a singer-songwriter. That was not something I had planned back then. I remember having dreams of becoming a teacher, maybe even an actress. And then ultimately I settled on being a lawyer. And so that was the most recent decision that I made in terms of my career prospects. And that's the path that I chose. And so I went to law school, I became licensed to practice, took the state bar exam, all those fun things, and did get experience at a state judicial court level, as well as at a law firm, and then ultimately settled for a government agency that I'm working at and that I've moved into management for. But in the meanwhile, throughout the past few years, I began to explore this new field of artistry and of becoming a singer-songwriter. And how it all really started for me was with the writing. So at that time, the agency that I'm still working for, I was in a decision writer position, meaning that I was drafting decisions for administrative law judges who were ruling on disability claims. That's the field of work that I've been in. And so I was spending 8 hours a day at my computer going through medical records and drafting up these decisions that supported the judge's ruling outcomes. And I absolutely felt myself start to yearn for something a bit beyond just the legal framework. The legal analytical mindset is very structured, and I appreciate it very much. But I know that there are other ways of thinking out there too, particularly creative ways. And so what really spoke to me in terms of becoming a songwriter and a singer was the creative aspect of all of this. I could feel deep in my bones that I was yearning for some sort of a creative outlet. And that's really how this all started for me, because again, there I was at my computer typing away diligently for all those 8 hours per workday. And then I started to have these song verses come to me. I thought, oh, that's a nice little lyric right there.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah, it's a special moment. And so that's something I've trained myself to be aware of and on the lookout for times when possible lyric verses come to me. And I do everything that I can to capture those lines, So I'm creating myself voice memos and just typing up notes furiously on my phone because there's no way that I'm going to let that opportunity pass up. And so ultimately, these songs that I've written, they just started to form over time. I don't think that I've ever written a song where I just sat down for one session and had, verse 1 and then verse 2 and verse 3 and a chorus and so on and so forth. Most of these songs have just accumulated over time because I paid attention to when the inspiration struck me and then I captured it in a voice memo or a note, that sort of thing. And then
it's funny that you bring that up because I use the voice memo on my iPhone all the time. It's one of the things that it's elusive, right? You get this lyric, you get this thought or concept or hook that you have in your mind. And I've listened to a lot of your music this week, and I see that creative flow. But it's interesting because I have to capture it immediately, and I use that voice record so many times. I'll be standing in the middle of a Walmart and I'll sing a chorus. People look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, I'm going to use that one day, so I can appreciate that.
Yes. I feel like the inspiration strikes me a lot when I'm on the road, because I commute for a good hour back and forth to get to work. And I think that's just when my mind is kind of perhaps the least busy and open to being inspired like that. And so I might have a lyric come to me while I'm driving down the road. And I tell my brain, ooh, hold on to that. I don't have time to record you right now. Just stay in my mind until I can park, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But I appreciate your story about being in Walmart and being inspired and having to capture what comes to you. Absolutely.
So AnnaBelle, if I can ask you, this morning, yesterday, in fact, I guess on the calendar, you had a new release come out called Belong.
Yes.
First of all, before we go any further, I just want to tell everybody it's a great song. It's very well done. It's very well polished. And, I looked back through your history of music and I see that progression of improvement with each track. Yes. I also, AnnaBelle, I looked in your Instagram and I saw a lot of videos like where you're connecting with your audience through little Instagram posts or things of that nature. And so I got a glimpse of, and I don't know if it's your studio or it's somebody else's studio, but with a lot of us independent artists, we use like a DAW, some of those in-home tools to kind of put those creative thoughts that you mentioned earlier into some kind of format. And I was wondering, and this is just a personal question, do you do that yourself or do you have somebody help you with that?
Sure. So all of my tracks, all of my singles that have been released are professionally produced. I work with Jerry Martin, who is a local producer where I live, and also my vocal coach, which is just an amazing combination. Oh my goodness. I could not have asked for a better partner than him. I feel so blessed to be able to work with him. And he's very big in the gospel community. He was inducted into the Gospel Hall of Fame back around 2000. So he's super experienced. He has 30 years in the music field, 20 years spent touring, 10 years working at Dollywood as a professional singer. So I know I'm in very good hands. And so, yes, he has professionally produced all of my tracks. And then some of my promo videos, the ones that you're referencing from Instagram, some of those have been recorded at his studio as well. And then others are self-recorded, perhaps on my phone, that sort of thing. Although I will say I'm trying to learn Audacity. I've been playing around a lot with Audacity, which is a recording software that I can use at home. Because I would love to get to the point to where I can do some self-recordings just to help me be able to produce more content, right? Because right now I just meet with my producer / vocal coach about once a week. And sometimes that's a long time that I have to wait to get to meet up back with him. So it would be great, if I could continue to develop my own self-recording.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun hobby too. And you talked about, we all have day jobs, right? A lot of us indie artists that we're doing something. You're working in a law firm, and I'm working in a big energy industry, for energy efficiency projects. But when it comes to music, what I've learned personally is that learning the aspects of recording, and it took me a long time, Anna. It's not that I picked up how to be a DAW expert and put out 1,000 tracks that first year, but it's really helped me understand the recording process better. And so, I encourage you to keep pursuing that and make that part of your hobby, because it's really interesting. But I want to kind of circle back to Belong, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
So the song, it really struck me, and I listened to a lot of your other tracks that you had. But with this latest project, Belong, what were you trying to express that maybe you hadn't been able to say before in some of your other releases?
That's a really beautiful question, Brian. Thank you. I don't know if you can tell just through the song itself that it's very meaningful to me. It's a very special song to me. It's my 6th song on my album and my 3rd original song, and it has come at a time that I feel the best about releasing it, because I would describe the song Belong as my rite of passage song. It's my calling card song. It's my anchoring song. It's my song that shows me and the world who I am as an artist and who I intend to continue to become. So the way that I like to describe the song is that it's a song for anyone who's on the path to becoming and belonging. And so, like we've been talking about, I didn't start out as an artist, not in my younger years, not even in my young adulthood phase, but here later in life, this is when I've stepped into becoming the artist I'm dreaming to become. And so Belong for me, it's that point in my artistry where I get to step out truly as I am, and where I'm not waiting for anyone's permission. And I'm not waiting for anyone to validate me. I'm believing enough in myself and in my artistry that I'm excited to share my music. And I know that this song will connect with other people out there, maybe with other artists, or just really anyone who's trying something out new for the first time and stepping into this unknown field, doesn't quite know what to expect, but is really excited by the prospects and motivated to continue on that path. So it means the world to me that you've listened to the song and that you've connected to it. I'm really excited to see where it goes. I have a personal promoter I work with, actually, who's from France, which is really, really neat. So we have our little Zoom calls every other week, and we get to update each other on everything that's happening. And the way that I had described Belong the last time to her was that, this is my baby. This song is a baby. And I was so excited to just release it to the world and let it fly. And now
you're showing pictures of your baby to everybody.
Yeah. And it's exciting too that I'm at a point in my artistry where I feel like my songs can start to work for me, because being an independent artist is it's a job unto itself, and it takes an immense amount of work, especially if you're juggling a bunch of other roles and responsibilities like I am and like you are and many other independent artists out there. But it's so exciting when you as an artist start to feel like, ooh, I'm going to release these songs and now they're going to do their thing and start to circulate, and then it'll be wonderful once I see that return on investment.
Yeah, I love that answer. And, in particular, when I listened to the song this morning, and I tried to stay up late and listen to it last night, I never made it. So I jumped up this morning and listened to it. I really appreciate it. And, obviously your voice is just beautiful in the song, but the bass line, I dabble in playing bass, and I thought the bass line in the song really complemented the violins and different things that were elements of the music. So it was very well recorded, very well produced, which kind of, is why I asked you if you were doing this yourself, because I was amazed. I was like, wow, this is a fantastic job. But you mentioned earlier that, you kind of started this journey kind of later in life.
Yes.
And can you share with the audience and maybe just take us back to that moment when you realized that, hey, I still have to keep my day job, but I really want to make this hobby something. And what was that moment that you said, I want to try this. I want to do this. I want to give us a shot and see what happens?
Oh, I really like that question. And at first, when you started asking that question, I panicked a little bit. I thought, oh no, can I remember the moment when that happened for me, when it clicked? But actually, I think I can. So what happened is I had released my first original song, Lovebirds, and I was very excited about it, right? Because it was my first original song. So that was my first baby that I shared with the world. And so being excited, I started to submit it to songwriting competitions, that sort of thing. And I remember just not really knowing what to expect. I was hopeful that maybe my song would win some sort of a competition, but I didn't know for sure one way or another what would really happen. Anyway, fast forward, I got the email that indicated that my song was not a winner. Actually, it's like I found out because I looked at the list of the winning songs and my song was not on there. So, okay, ergo, my song was not a winner. And yeah, I was disappointed and I was a bit upset, admittedly. But I remember that day going on a walk around my neighborhood and just thinking to myself, ooh, am I not supposed to be an artist? This song is so special to me. I think that it's a wonderful song. Is it not connecting to others? What do I do here? Because at that point, I was still kind of looking for signs that artistry was the right path for me, right? Because I stepped into this completely on my own. Nobody ever said, hey, AnnaBelle, you should become a songwriter or a singer, that sort of thing. It's something that I absolutely ventured into based on my own interests and preferences. And so anyway, that day that I found out that my first original song was not a winning song in the song competition, I went on that walk and I had that conversation with myself. And what I realized at that moment was, it's not that this path necessarily chose me. It's that I've chosen this path. I am so intrigued and inspired and excited about being an artist that I'm the one who made the commitment. What am I thinking, looking for signs from the universe that somehow I've been chosen? It's the other way around. Like, I see the value in being an artist so much that I'm putting forth all of this effort and making time for it and spending money, all the expenses that come with being an independent artist. But it was at that moment that I realized that I got to choose the path that I've been on, continue to be on, and will continue to be on. And so I would say that's when things clicked for me, that this is the path forward.
And I hear a sense of, I don't care what the world thinks. I'm doing this for myself.
Yeah.
I love it. It's my hobby. I'm claiming it. And I appreciate that, because I think all too often, musicians have to become social media experts, or they choose that path. They're like, how do I get more people to listen to my song on Spotify or YouTube? And what is the importance of that? Because let's break it down. If you do any research on Spotify, the odds of your Spotify song ever like taking off and becoming a big thing, it's literally like you could literally get struck by lightning twice before that would happen. and it's what's, to me, with my music in particular, I do it for myself and I enjoy it. It brings me such joy and pleasure and escape if you will, from I'm sure you're a very good lawyer and I'm very good at what I do at my job, but the music is our escape. It's what we really wish we were doing full time for a job. But at the same time, that balance. So how do you balance the social media? I don't know what the best word to say it is. This obsession with social media and how it kind of defines artists. To me, if I go on somebody's page and they have 10 million views, I'm not that impressed. I found you and I looked at your page and I said, oh, I'm going to go check this person out for whatever reason. And I think it was authenticity. And it was just that you kept it real. You weren't putting out videos of, jumping off a building and trying to get views. You were just like, here I am. Here's my music. Hope you like it. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that that's the takeaway that you've gotten from my social media accounts. That is the approach that I'm taking. I'm really not interested in putting myself in a box or fitting some sort of cookie cutter shape. That has never been my motivation. And I think the driving force for me is that I 100% believe that my music will find the right listeners and the right hearts over time. Like, I'm in this for the long term, for the long haul. I have no grand delusions of like thinking that there's going to be any sort of overnight success with my music. I'm perfectly fine with that. I can be patient. Thank goodness I have the stability from my legal career. Things would be different if I didn't have that source of support and source of income in my life and for my family. And so I'm absolutely continuing to trudge along as a lawyer. That's not something that I intend to give up anytime soon. That's that sort of thing. But ultimately with my social media, I'm using those as vehicles, as platforms just for sharing my music and to find followers out there. But I don't feel the need to sort of pander to any particular groups. And I take that same approach with the music that I'm creating as well. Like you said, my music is authentic. It's not meant to fit into any specific box, and I'm allowing myself to continue to explore and just to be open-minded to whatever music I create in the future. I appreciate so much you had mentioned that you listen through my different songs and you can pick up on the development throughout all the different songs. And that is so true. And I hear it myself, and so does my producer, Jerry, and we're just excited about it. We're excited to be able to experience and witness that development together. And so I'm excited about whatever future prospects there will be with my music. But I absolutely intend on continuing to be authentic and releasing music that is true to my heart, but that I know will be universally relatable in some way as well. So I'm working hard to keep that balance of being authentic and expressing what's in my heart and in my soul, but still realizing that if I'm going to share music, it has to mean something to other people too, right? Because if I'm just going to create music that only I care about, then I can just listen to it in my car and there we go. Good times for me. But ultimately, my intent is to create music that other people can connect to as well, while still being honest with my own artistic journey.
Love it. So I want to talk about your music in particular, because for people that don't know, people just listening to the show, they're like, who is AnnaBelle? What type of music does she play? And so for me, and everybody interprets AnnaBelle's music differently. So everybody might put their own spin on it. But for me, when I was listening through your music, you have elements that remind me of, there's a song that Joan Baez does called Diamonds and Rust. And I picked up a little bit on that. Judy Collins, I know this is kind of hokey, but Send in the Clowns, there's elements of that song. They're so beautiful. And they remind me, much like Joni Mitchell does, of kind of your elegant, you've described your music as kind of whimsical or dainty sometimes. And it's more of a folk tradition, Americana music. But you mentioned that you listen, or that you lived on the East Coast. And so I wanted to ask the question, and this long-winded question is, when you're in the East Coast and you're living your day-to-day life, do you see a lot of, folk Americana singers out there? I would assume there's more probably on the East Coast and West Coast than maybe in mid-Central America. But kind of give me the vibe of what that scene is, and is there a lot of it?
Great question. So I live pretty close to Nashville, and so I always associate Nashville, of course, with country music, but I understand that Nashville is known for folk Americana artists too. But in my neck of the woods, which is a few hours away from Nashville, I will say I got to recently attend Alison Krauss's concert. So she came down to the area where I live, and she's one of my favorite artists. So I had to, of course, go listen to her. So Alison Krauss on the Union Station. And apparently she comes to this area annually, is what I was hearing from a friend, which really surprised me. But who knew that Alison Krauss would frequent the East Tennessee area so much? In terms of other artists, let's see, I had traveled to North Carolina maybe a year ago to see Rachel Platten. Of course, I don't necessarily classify her as folk or Americana or country or anything of that sort. But certainly Alison Krauss has frequented the area.
It's interesting because we have, and I've seen this uptick because we have another artist coming on that's kind of an Americana folk singer, very talented artist. I'll save her name because it's a secret. She's coming on soon. And and I'm seeing kind of this, I don't know, regrowth, reinvigoration of the folk music. And so, you know, I'm an old time rocker, Anna. So it's like, wow, I didn't know this folk stuff was just thriving, but it really is. I'm curious because you mentioned that you kind of got back into music kind of later in life, but I don't know if you play any instruments or you're learning to play any instruments, but do you have any challenges? I guess, are you trying to pick up some new tools of the trade at the moment?
Oh, I am. So I would say the primary instrument that I'm learning to play is the flute. And I became so inspired to learn to play the flute after listening to the song by a German band called Fawn. They have this song called Fiederkleid that is just so fun and jovial and amazing to listen to. I highly recommend anyone who's listening to this podcast to go check out Fawn, Faun, and their song Fiederkleid, Federkleid. That song inspired me to go pick up a flute and start to learn to play. So I'm taking online lessons to learn how to play the flute. It's a process because you have to train your mouth muscles to create the correct embouchure in order to really direct your airflow into the flute's hole, what's called the aperture. So like that takes time, but it's a beautiful instrument, the flute is. And what excites me about learning the flute too is that it inspires me to pick up on the piano again. So I had taken a piano class back in high school, and I've dabbled with playing the piano since then, working, using apps to help reacquaint me with the piano. But my game plan at this point is to continue to learn how to play the flute and pick up the piano as well, as in do a flute practice and then immediately afterward go hop on the piano and play the same music on the piano that I was playing on the flute, and just really allow myself that benefit of immersing in the musical instrument experience and being able to learn both instruments at the same time. So I'm really excited about it. Again, I think the flute is such a beautiful instrument. And in the meanwhile, I'm also starting to pick up on the harmonica because I think it would be really helpful as a singer-songwriter who's interested in doing some local performances to have sort of a quick instrument that I can pick up on and incorporate into my songs. And so the harmonica is the third instrument that I am working on incorporating into my musical journey.
Well, and I might add that those three, well, in particular, the flute and the harmonica, could really be a huge asset for the type of music that you play, and they would be a great addition. You could probably insert them in any song that you've ever done, and that it would fit perfectly. Couple fun things, and I like to just kind of let the folks that listen to you, that if they know you, that's great, and if they don't know you, I always try to give them a little bit more of a personal side of who AnnaBelle really is. And one question that I like to ask is, what is a hobby? And let's stay away from music because we know you're a musician. But what is one hobby that you might have that would surprise your fans?
I love that question very much. So a quick answer that comes to my mind, but that wouldn't necessarily be surprising, but I'm just going to share anyway because I love this hobby so much, is yoga. I'm a yoga nut. I love, love, love yoga. It's something that I regularly practice at the gym. Try to go as many times as I can throughout the week. Highly recommend it for all genders. Apparently, yoga started out as a male sport activity, which really surprises me because when you go to any modern yoga class now, you primarily see females. And so if I do see a male in there, I'm always like silently cheering that person on. Like, yes, you made the right decision. Good job for being here. But so that's one hobby that I absolutely love that might not surprise people. But a different hobby that I have that could be more surprising is I would describe myself as a conference or retreat junkie. As in, I love going to conferences and retreats. I just find them to be so inspiring and reinvigorating, and they're always such a nice reset for me. So, for example, there's this facility in North Carolina that I love to attend. It's called the Art of Living facility in Boone, North Carolina, and I've been there multiple different times. For example, a few years back, I went there for a silence retreat. And so we actually were silent. Everybody who attended that retreat, we were silent for 3 days. We were not allowed to talk. And we had to walk around with our little sign of, like, I'm in silence, please don't ask me anything. And so the idea was just to really spend that time immersed as a group, listening to a lecture by the teacher, as well as meditating and doing some more yoga. And so it was very much a joyous moment when we all got to speak again after the 3 days of silence. I think we all really appreciated it. But just going through that experience was a wonderful reset. And I remember getting back to work, my lawyer job, and feeling very refreshed. So awesome. I love being on the lookout for all sorts of conferences and retreats whenever I have the opportunity to go.
Good idea. Good idea. We talked earlier about kind of your writing style and a little bit how you do that. And you can elaborate on that point as well. But I think, there's two types of musicians, it seems like, in my experience when I talk to people. There's these night owls who get this inspiration to write music. I don't know. They start a project at 9:00, they go all night and they have something they barely remember the next morning. Then they have the early morning creators that they get some inspiration, they start it, and they end up spending the whole day on it. So would you classify yourself, Anna, as more of a night owl writer, or AnnaBelle, are you a early morning creator?
Great question. I would probably say both. So sorry that I'm not giving one distinct answer. I think it just depends on the song that I'm working on. Preferably, I would be more of an early morning creator because that's when I'm feeling the most refreshed. And for example, I've noticed that when it comes time for me to put together any social media content, I do the best on the weekends after getting some sleep on the Friday night because, of course, I'm staying very busy throughout the work week doing my main day job. And so I'm going to be most energized and open to creativity on the weekend after sleeping some on Friday night. So preferably I would be an early morning creator, but I will say my most recent song, Belong, I finished that song late one night. I remember I had just watched the Louis Capaldi documentary that you can find on Netflix. And so that's something that I love to do as well. In addition to loving to attend conferences and retreats, I love watching musicians' documentaries. Those just inspire me so much. They fire me up. I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to hear the background stories of these celebrity artists we've heard of and know about. But anyway, I had just watched the Louis Capaldi documentary late at night, and I became so inspired that I finished out my song Belong. And I remember staying up late into the night, maybe for 4 hours. It felt like 4 hours working on that song and finally finishing it. Because that song, I think it's a song that I worked on for at least a year, maybe 1 or 2 years. I was just working on it, piecemeal by piecemeal. The verses were just coming to me slowly. But after watching that documentary, I got to finish the song. So that was a really amazing experience to go through, I have to say. It was worth it to lose the sleep.
You got the boost you needed.
Yes, I really did.
In your bio, and you just briefly touched on it in your last answer, but you mentioned that you love movies. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Top 2 movies of yours of all time.
Ooh, my favorite childhood movie was Never Been Kissed by Drew Barrymore. And I also really love Avatar, the first one, the original Avatar movie.
Great movie.
It is priceless. Yeah.
Great movie. So I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I don't want to take up your whole morning. And you've been so gracious to come on and answer our questions. But I do have one question, and you can take as long as you want to answer it. So when listeners finish watching this episode in particular, what do you hope they understand about AnnaBelle that they didn't know before? What do you really want to relay to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity for me to answer that question. Ultimately, what I would really, really hope for listeners to take away from this podcast episode, and especially after listening to my music, is just for them to know that I really genuinely am coming from a good place. I have only positive intentions with my music. Music to me is this opportunity to spread the light, because we live in a really heavy world, a very dark world at times. Things can get very heavy very fast. So much conflict going on in this world. And so when I create this music, it's me coming from a place of peace and wanting to spread that peace. So my ultimate hope is that listeners will feel comforted and inspired and uplifted when they hear my music. And so I want them to know that I'm coming from a good place and that I'm working on creating what I'd like to call a community of heart-minded integrity listeners. And so heart-minded integrity, what that means is the ability to lead with both compassion and clarity and act in a way that's true, grounded, and whole. And so, we all go through our day-to-day lives wearing so many different masks and hats and playing so many different roles. I know I do. I have a lot of roles and responsibilities in my life. But that's in particular why music is so important to me, because it's that opportunity for me to step out and kind of take off the mask, if you know what I mean, and just present myself in a genuine, authentic way. And so that's the type of world that I would like to live in and that I hope to be able to help create. I mean, we're all in it together, and there's only so much that I can do, me personally, but I know that I am one of those actors, one of those players who can introduce something positive into the world, and then that in itself can have a ripple effect. And so eventually work toward creating something really beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful answer. It's poignant, it's timely. It's a great message. And I would like to just add, and I think you might agree with me on this, that the music that we leave behind, whether it's your music, AnnaBelle, it's my music, whoever stumbles across that one day, it's a little part of our legacy that we're leaving behind. Maybe our grandkid sees it in 2 days and go, "Oh, that was fantastic. I didn't know that was my grandmother or my grandfather." And so for me, I think that legacy and what we leave behind is important, and the quality of that is important. But it's also really darn fun, and I think we can agree on that as well. So Anna, we're gonna wrap up this episode, and first of all, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down, share your thoughts with us and your messages and your music. You seem like a wonderful person. I feel like I've made a new friend today. So I hopefully we'll chat again one day or have you on the show again. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Well, thank you so much for having me on here. I've really enjoyed this opportunity to share more of my artistry with the world and to be able to talk to you. And again, I love this topic, Inside the Creative Mind. So I would say I will end my commentary by telling folks you're never too old to follow your passion or to do what moves you.
Oh, that's a great message. And that's really helpful for me, Anna, because I'm 57 and I'm still plugging away. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the motivational speak. Ladies and gentlemen, please go out and listen to AnnaBelle Swift. She has a ton of great music out there. Her new single, Belong, is fantastic. So go check her out today. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to Inside the Creative Mind with Brian Jones. Keep exploring, keep creating, and don't forget to tune in for the next 30 minutes of inspiration streaming on all platforms. Your next spark of creativity is just a play button away.